Welcome to Whispering Cabins, where we share cozy horror tales of ghosts, folklore, and forgotten places. So grab a blanket, light a candle, and settle in. The night is waiting. Tonight, we tell the story of the return of Ashwood Manor. The fog came early that autumn, rolling in from the river like a great grey blanket. It curled along the cobblestone streets of Hollowford, a small town where the church bell still rang on the hour, and everyone knew which bakery made the better bread. To most, the fog was nothing unusual, but to the older townsfolk, those with grey at their temples and memory still sharp, it stirred whispers. For this year marked 100 years since the last sighting of Ashwood Manor's master. The manor sat at the very edge of Hollowford, where the woods thickened and the river narrowed. For decades it had stood empty, ivy crawling up its stone walls, windows black as if they were eyes closed in endless sleep. Children dared each other to throw rocks at the gates or press a hand to the iron bars, only to dart away squealing. Adults avoided it altogether, muttering bad luck when their paths took them too close. But on this fog-drenched evening, lamps glowed within the house for the first time in a century. Mrs. Evelyn Carow, the town librarian, saw them first as she locked up. She paused on the library steps, squinting through the fog at the faint flicker of yellow light. Her heart gave a slow thump. She knew the stories well. How Lord Silas Ashwood had vanished one stormy night in 1824, leaving only rumours behind. Rumours of strange appetites, of villagers found pale and lifeless near the river, of a family curse that demanded blood. Now, it seemed, he had come home. The following morning, the news had spread through Hollowford as quickly as spilled ink. The Ashwood gates were open, swept clean of rust. A carriage, black, elegant, and archaic, stood in the drive. Impossible, scoffed the baker, Mr. Harrow. No man lives that long. Not a man, whispered old Mrs. Pennington, as she adjusted her shawl. Not a man at all. By afternoon, Hollowford was in a strange state of unease. Curiosity wrestled with fear, and when the invitation came, a thick card delivered by a gloved messenger, it set the whole town abuzz. Lord Silas Ashwood requests your company this Saturday at Ashwood Manor, a gathering in honour of his return. The handwriting was exquisite, a slanting script that seemed to shimmer when the light hit it just so. Few wanted to attend, yet none dared decline, for though a century had passed, the Ashwood name still carried weight, and something in the invitation felt less like a request and more like a summons. Saturday came with an early dusk. One by one, carriages rolled toward the manor, wheels crunching over gravel. Townsfolk, stiff in their Sunday best, exchanged nervous glances as they crossed the threshold. Inside, the manor gleamed as though no dust had ever touched it. Candles blazed in golden sconces. Chandeliers shimmered, and velvet drapes framed tall windows. The scent of roses drifted faintly in the air, and then he appeared. Lord Silas Ashwood looked exactly as the portraits had shown him. Tall, elegant, with dark hair brushing his shoulders, and eyes a startling grey, almost silver. His suit was cut in the fashion of another century, yet it suited him flawlessly. His smile, when it came, was warm and disarming. "Friends," he said, voice smooth as polished oak. "How good it feels to be home." Some of the tension in the air eased, as though his words alone could soothe. Glasses of wine were pressed into hands, music drifted from the gallery, and laughter cautiously rose. The townsfolk began to wonder if the stories had been only stories after all. Only Mrs. Carow, standing near the fire, kept her gaze fixed on him. There was something in the way his shadow clung too tightly. in how he never sipped from his glass, though it gleamed with red. As the evening deepened, Silas moved among his guests with a gracious air, speaking of the town as though he had only been gone a season. He remembered details no one had told him, whose great-grandfather built the clock tower, which family once kept the orchard by the river. His memory, it seemed, spanned not years, but centuries. At last, when the hour crept toward midnight, he raised his glass. "To Hollowford," he said. "May it remain ever faithful, as it has been through the years." The words were met with hesitant applause. Yet as the crystal chimed, Mrs. Carrow noticed three things at once. No one had heard the church bell toll midnight. The fog had pressed itself tight against the windows, thick and unmoving, and Lord Ashwood's reflection did not appear in the great mirror behind him. Her breath caught. She set down her glass, and in that instant, Silas's eyes met hers across the room. The faintest curve touched his lips, an acknowledgement, a warning, or perhaps a promise. The gathering ended without incident. Guests left the manor whispering, some giddy with relief, others uneasy but unwilling to name why. Yet in the nights that followed, Hollowford changed. Stray dogs vanished. The butcher's son was found asleep by the riverbank, pale and weak, with no memory of how he'd come there. Windows began to close earlier, doors locked at sunset. The town held its breath, and every evening, as the fog rolled in, lights burned steady in Ashwood Manor. 1 week later, Mrs. Carrow was closing the library when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to find Lord Ashwood himself standing in the lamplight, tall hat in hand. "Good evening, Mrs. Carrow," he said, his voice as smooth as ever. "I find myself in need of your services." "You are the keeper of Hollowford's histories, are you not?" Her pulse thudded in her throat. "I am," she managed. "Splendid." His smile revealed, just for a heartbeat, the glint of sharpness behind it. "I should like to learn what has become of my town in my absence. And who better to tell me than its memory?" He extended his arm. The fog curled around them like a waiting cloak, and though every sense in her body screamed to flee, Mrs. Carrow found herself placing her hand upon his sleeve, stepping into the mist at his side. From that night forward, Hollowford's library windows glowed late into the hours, as if stories were being shared long past midnight, and the townsfolk, whispering in the safety of their homes, could never decide if Mrs. Carrow had become his prisoner or his confidant. Either way, the vampire had returned, and Hollowford, bound by silence and fog, belonged to him once more. Thank you for joining us tonight at Whispering Cabins, where we tell cozy horror tales. If you enjoyed The Return of Ashwood Manor, be sure to subscribe for more eerie stories. Until next time, keep warm, keep the lantern lit, and listen closely. Sometimes the shadows have stories to tell.